want to get right to Congressman Randy Forbes this morning. He is, as the president officially unveils his gun control plan today, we want to talk about that with him. Congressman, it's nice to have you with us. We appreciate your time this morning.
Well, Soledad, it's good to be with you, and Happy New Year. First time I've talked to you this year.
I know. Thank you. Likewise to you, sir. So I was running through some of what we believe are going to be in the president's proposals that he will announce later today. Of that list of things, assault weapons ban, high-capacity magazine ban, universal background checks, more funding for mental health programs, pick the one or the three things that you would say, yes, as a congressperson, this can make a change in what is happening in this country now with gun violence. What three things would you support there?
Well, Soledad, I don't think we can say that. And the reason is I sit on the Judiciary Committee, and I'll sit on the subcommittee that'll hear these proposals. We're looking forward to hearing what the president has, but you may have those proposals. We do not have the proposals yet. And we still have this concept that we do the trials before we do the verdicts. And in here, we do the hearings and gather the facts and get the evidence. So what we're looking forward to is getting the president's proposals and then hearing the facts on both sides of this case.
But people in D.C., they leak like sieves. So the proposals, and no one has given them to us yet either, but we've been able to craft them from what people who've been in a lot of these conversations have to say. But hypothetically speaking, of the things that I've laid out, hypothetically, if he were in fact to lay those out, what thing, even without the list, what would you be comfortable in supporting that would make a change that helps confront this big issue of gun violence in this country? Name the thing that you support.
Okay, if I can name the things that I would support, first of all, I'd say where I got my information from. And just in the last few weeks, I've talked to sheriffs and police chiefs. Let me tell you some things that they have that are not the real hot topics that you guys are looking at now, and maybe even the president's looking at. For example, I had one sheriff in the western part of the country yesterday that told me that the big problem that they had is they'll have juveniles sometime that'll have criminal offenses with firearms that won't even get a severe penalty until the 5th time that they've used them. We need to deal with that, and we need to look at that problem. Second thing is, I had a police chief in the southern part of the country that told me yesterday, look, sometimes our prosecutors aren't prosecuting cases. They had a situation on videotape in a car wash where someone had a mass killing there. The prosecutor said he didn't have enough evidence. The federal government had to come in under a firearm and get a conviction. That's what we need to do. And then the third big thing, Soledad, that's not in all of this, is right now, if you really look at the spike up in violent activity, and much of it with guns, it's in our gang activity that's taking place. The police chief told me just the other day, we've got some of our gangs here that are doing most of this violence, and they haven't even talked about that. So they're the kinds of things that we're looking forward to actually having police chiefs, actually having sheriffs come in and tell us what's the real problem, what do we need to get our hands around, and we'll be dealing with that.
Really smart, and all those things that you listed, I think, do sound like huge problems. But as you know, when the gang activity that the sheriffs and the police officers were talking about, one of the big problems there are the straw purchasers, right? And the reason they're able to do that is because we don't have universal background checks, and we don't have an ability to...
Soledad, let me just point this out to you. That's exactly what we need to be hearing in our committees, because what the police chiefs will tell you is that most of these gang members aren't buying these things.
No, their girlfriends are. Their girlfriends who don't have records are, right?
Or they're going to steal those guns, because most of these people are not in the business of buying them legitimately. And so one of the things we've got to make sure of, Soledad, is, look, I understand a lot of people hate guns and are fearful of guns, and I appreciate that. But what we don't want to do is just come in and say these things sound good or feel good, but they're really not going to get at the problem. That's what we'll be looking at in the Judiciary Committee.
So the universal background check, how could you be against that? And I don't hate guns. I'm not any more afraid of them than, you know, sort of anything else. I think smart people who are well educated in how to use them can use guns very effectively and efficiently. And I trust police and sheriffs when they tell me about their concerns. So I'm not one of those people that you list. So to me, a universal background check sounds very pragmatic. I would like to know who is selling weapons. I'd like to know if they have a felony conviction. I would like to understand who's got weapons. Why?
I think you can take it further than that, Soledad. Well, first of all, I didn't say it was, because we haven't had the hearings to see the proposals. But I think the other thing that you didn't even mention was we want to make sure that people with mental illnesses don't have them. We want to make sure that people have committed crimes. So you're exactly right. We need to do that analysis, but we also need to make sure that we're not doing stuff in there that are going to jeopardize people's rights. Let me give you a perfect example. We had the same kind of argument that took place in Virginia about 15 years ago. We had a bill that came on because we wanted to take guns off of school property. You and I both agree that that should happen. However, the bill would have said that if you or I borrowed somebody's car, we took our child to school to drop them off in the parking lot, and there was a gun in the glove compartment that we didn't even know about, we'd have been guilty of a felony. So, Soledad, in that particular situation, when we just said, don't we want to exclude people who didn't even know that guns existed, some of the people in that debate said, oh my gosh, you just want to have guns on school property and you don't care about kids. And sometimes the devil is in the details. They're the kind of details that we'll get at our hearings when we really get people that are dealing with these matters come in and testify, Soledad, and we will be doing that. This is the President of the United States. He deserves to have a hearing on his proposals, and we want to make sure we give him a fair and balanced hearing, and at the end we'll make decisions based on the evidence that we accumulate, not what the President just comes in and tells us before we've documented it.
So I got to ask you about this Congressional
Sure.
Accountability Pay Act that you have now filed legislation for. It would say that if federal spending increases by, say, 3%, then salaries for Congress would be cut by that same 3%. And I'm curious how effective this could be when you consider most Congress people actually make way more money than your average American. I mean, the top 50 Congress people are making like $6 million. So a 3% cut to their salary is like $5,000. It won't mean anything. I mean, do you think this really has legs, or are you trying to make a bigger point with this measure?
No, Soledad, I think it does have legs, and let me just tell you why. You and I both know, because we've talked about this before, we've got to fundamentally change how we do business in Washington, how we think and how we act. And everybody agrees, you would agree, I would agree, the fundamental problem we have is this out-of-control spending. So what we have to do is either the President has to take control of it, which so far his budgets haven't done, or either we have to have a balanced budget amendment, which is very difficult because we need 2/3 votes and the states have to ratify it, and we just don't have time. Time will run out on us. Or we look at legislators and say, you need to have some skin in the game. If you can't control your spending and it goes up by 10%, your salary goes down by 10%.
But sir,
it won't impact the people with 6 million.
You make a lot of money. So Forbes says you are a wealthy man. That 10% of your salary in Congress, which is roughly $170-something thousand, that is not going to be a dent in your personal wealth. So I'm wondering, and there's a lot of Congress people who make way more than you have wealth far higher than yours. Is it really going to hurt them?
Soledad, Forbes has never said that about me. I wish they did. I wish that was true. Yeah, well, I think if you look at was it accurate, and I think one of the things that you will find is that members of Congress will pay attention if they actually have skin in the game. It's one of the things that we shouldn't be doing. We've had these pay increases for members of Congress. I voted against every one of them. I think what we ought to be doing is saying, if you can't deliver, we're not going to continue to give you the payment that you would get if you can deliver. That's what the CAP Act says. It will have some results. The question is whether we can get it out of the Congress and especially out of the Senate.
Forbes magazine says your estimated wealth in 2010 was just under $3 million. They're making that up?
Well, Soledad, what you didn't look at is
high.
They are making it. They're very high. And let me tell you why. If you look at the way they do that, they take the disclaimer forms, and the disclaimer forms take all of your assets, but they have ranges that can be $1 million or $2 million off. So all they say is he has a house that's worth between $500,000 and $3 million, and then they always go to the high side.
Their math is a little off. It's
but
nice.
I wish it was accurate, Soledad. Yeah.
We wish it were accurate for you as well. Nice to talk to you,
Thanks.
Congressman Randy
Always
Forbes.
good to talk with you.
Appreciate that. Republican from the state of Virginia joining us this morning. There are other stories making news.